welcome and thank you for joining. We're currently introducing ourselves in the chat over here, so feel free to drop your information. We are going to be going over a bunch of interesting things today, so we're really excited to have Spencer on the call. Spencer is a specific real estate agent that we're really excited to have on the show. He has grown his business in the past 3 years to become one of the top 1% real estate agents in the entire US, which is a pretty astounding accomplishment, and we're really excited to have him here today. Spencer, is there anything you want to say?
No, I'm excited to be on this webinar with you guys, and I look forward to be able to engage with you guys afterwards during our Q&A.
Awesome. So we'll get started. Welcome, everyone. We're going to talk about some general housekeeping before we get started. So a couple of things to note. The session will be recorded. All of the event sessions are recorded. So if you do have any questions or would like to get these recordings, if you're on this event right now, you will get a copy of that tomorrow morning. You'll also get any links or anything we talk about on this recording as well. Your video and audio are off unless you get promoted over to panelist and would like to come on and have discussions with us, which will be in the last 30 minutes. Please feel free to drop your questions in the chat as we get going. This is definitely something that we want to be an engaging conversation for both of us. So Spencer and I don't want to just talk to you for this whole time. We'd love to hear any questions you may have. So before we get started, today's session is around building strong relationships through having hard conversations. What that means, and Spencer can dive into this as well because he says this better than I can, but basically in our current climate, there are a lot of hard conversations that are coming up on a daily basis, especially in real estate. And we want to be able to set you up for success like Spencer has through having these difficult conversations. Spencer, can you go into a little bit deeper what these hard conversations are or why you think we're seeing them more in the market right now?
So every market is reacting differently over the last, let's say, 4 or 5 months. Right. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. The San Francisco Bay Area, relative to most other sectors of the market, has actually been hit the hardest. There's a lot of articles you may have heard, but any tech market has been that way, whether it's the Bay Area, whether it's Seattle, whether it's even Austin. And why is that? Why did that happen? Because tech in general follows a lot more with the stock market, and the stock market already had an impact about 6 months before the interest rates really started getting racked up. So you may see the declines already start to happen in November. And so fortunately, we've had a lot of more practice that was needed to have it much earlier than most of you guys had to do. I see a lot of the other areas that you guys deal with, maybe it's like 3 to 5% decline. It's fairly nominal. But in the Bay Area, it had already declined 15% since April. And most likely, though, to be fair, other areas may have this likely to come. And the Bay Area may get worse. We'll see what happens. And so the conversation we've had to deal with has been already ongoing, right? Because this continues to increase, because now we have concerns of layoffs, which is very real, right? For us to combat inflation, Jerome Powell wanted and needed to say, we need to have X percent likely unemployment, which is probably 6% plus unemployment. So job loss is going to be a real thing, even though the job market has still been very strong previously, but we see a lot of things already trickle down. And so as you can see, that's kind of the background, the macro background. That being said, even in any environment, people still need to make moves. But it's important for us to really uncover and discover and be very understanding of why did they even look for real estate to begin with, right? Everybody moves for their own reason. Now, the whole idea in the past, though, well, I just want to get in out of FOMO. So I wanted to get in because the market kept rising, otherwise I can't buy it. That whole mentality is gone, right? That's not going to happen. That's not even the pitch anymore. Everyone's still assuming that there's going to be an increase in prices. I'm going to call BS on that, to be fair. There's not going to be an increase in prices, right? Unless inflation could get tamed, which is not happening right now, or interest rates can drop significantly, you shouldn't be having that mindset and using, I know there's like keeping current matters, that chart and things like that. That's all good, but you want to start having the understanding of why do they look to begin with? Because those life changes still happen. Like in the Bay Area, still a lot of people have kids, so people need more space. People need more flexibility. They maybe still have flexibility at work. So you really need to uncover that and help them understand, well, fundamentally, the market will go up and down. And even though price may decline, the interest rates have risen. So to be fair, it's roughly maybe the same price that they would have been paying monthly anyways. And so you really want to uncover all these media headline articles of why were they looking at, and helping them refocus themselves and realize, yes, I was looking because I'm tired of paying higher rents, or I am looking for more space. And so it's more of the discovery of why were they looking to begin with, and trying to help them understand that was the reason why they even want to go out to look. Because the beauty of this market, good and bad, is if you're able to have that conversation with them and they're looking to buy, this has been the easiest buyer's market in a long time. We all can agree on that. Like, buyers have a lot more power now. You can get seller credits, you can get much lower prices, you can get discounts, you just have less competition. You can go with lower money down options, right? You can use VA loans, those all work again, right? So there's always pros and cons with every market, but the challenge right now is getting them past that initial hurdle, which they're going to get bombarded every single day of bad news. And that's our job, to help them understand that.
Yeah, so I think Spencer has a lot of great points here, and I'd love for people to drop in the chat what difficult conversations they're currently running into, because like Spencer said, this is a buyer's market in theory, right? It just depends how you break that down. So something that we hear a lot of agents running into is, people are getting bid out for all cash offers, right? There's lots of trouble like that continues to happen. And so it's more about how you're having the conversation and what the options are that you're giving them. Having a conversation about telling somebody, sorry, you didn't get the home that I know you were set on and your family is set on, is not a fun conversation to have, right? These are people's, this is where they live. And especially during the time of COVID, this is a place where most people spent a majority of their time, so this is really important to a lot of people for a lot of ways. So there's basically 4 key steps that psychology says, and I'll source it for you guys in the email that I send out after, for delivering bad news. And Spencer does this in a lot of his YouTube content, a lot of his social, just in how he engages people, and also in his business, that we've seen be really effective. And these 4 key steps are: you prepare beforehand, right? So you're not going into delivering bad news, hopefully, most likely, if you can prevent it, without all the information, right? You want to come prepared. This is really important no matter the deal that you're doing. Next is be the first, right? So delivery is important. Something that's even more important is being the first to deliver that bad news, right? We don't want to hear that from someone else or through the grapevine. Third is share fully and take responsibility for any actions or role you may have played in it, right? So in psychology, if you're sharing a piece of the puzzle, right, but not the full thing, and you're trying to sugarcoat it, if you will, you're actually, in the end, in time, everybody will find out the full truth. What you're doing is you're hurting your credibility, which will hurt your referrals in the future and your ability to grow, because people aren't going to want to work with somebody that they don't trust fully, right? And that's something that Spencer's done a really great job of, and I think he can talk more to in a second, is how, establishing your credibility, but also your trust is so important to business growth, because he works with businesses, not businesses, but clients of all budgets, right? So when you're looking at anyone in the market, it's really important that you have strong connections with your clients so that you can get those referrals. And then lastly is sharing the fixes, so not the excuses. So for example, if I'm just sharing all of the reasons that something went wrong and I'm not telling you about any of the solutions, I'm going to leave this conversation extremely frustrated, right? So Spencer, I'd love to hear from you, because I think you're really upfront about being transparent and stating where the market's at and what's to be expected. What are your thoughts on how you can take these points of delivering bad news properly, being fully prepared and transparent and taking responsibility, into your business, and how has that impacted you?
So we all first need to find out what do they think and where did they get that source from, right? So what's very important, especially in this market, is we don't want to be, and it's hard for us because we know a lot, we study the market, we look into the data all the time, and everybody's kind of busy in and out of helping other people. So we sometimes have to take a step back and ask them, like, why do you feel a certain way, and understanding that. And that's good to get their perspective. As soon as you are getting more of what they call as truth seeking, and you get a lot of the information from them, then you do have to be that strong truth teller. And it could be different ways, right? Like Tim just mentioned, different markets react differently, but all people will hear typically is general headline articles. And so maybe you have to show the local data of like what is actually happening. This is actually what's happening in our local market, good or bad. And here is a strategy in this environment. Right. So understanding their situation, sharing a lot of the local insights and data will help you position yourself of saying, look, I'm revealing everything. You can see it all in front of you. Right. It's all public. This is all real time information, real time data. And then a lot of people will start to understand that and come up with it. And then it's up to you guys as a collective group to come up with a game plan with that information that you just shared. That usually helps a lot with when it comes to just reframing expectations. And you want to have it a lot more with your clients these days, right? It's the last, like I said, they're going to be hearing terrible negative news all day, every day right now. I've seen it on all headline articles, right? Whether it's terrible interest rates, whether it's prices dropping, whether it's all economists forecasting a crash. So you want to not necessarily get ahead of them, but you also want to share your opinion along with what is actually happening on a local level to help reframe them, and as a reminder, help them understand like why did they even start looking to begin with.
Right. And something that has been brought up in the chat and you mentioned as well is framing expectations, right? You want to be able to enter a conversation by having realistic expectations from the start. So that's really important when you are moving into, working with anyone in any industry, but especially real estate. So Spencer, you had the ability to grow your business in a really short period of time, or relatively short period of time. What would you say are the main factors that have been able to do this for you? And in the chat, I'd really like to hear any pain points or challenges that you faced that's prevented or made it harder for you to get to the point that you would like to be at.
Yeah, so a little bit background of the production so it gives people perspective. So I'm about to wrap up my 4th year in the business. It's not my 4th year yet, but last year, as an example, on Real Trends, I did 73 million in production, and I'm in the Bay Area. So that was my 3rd year, and I was still a solo agent. So that was all my own production. And then so as we look forward to this year, and we're wrapping up this year, a part of the growth was to continue to grow that number. So this year I'll do more than that, but at the same time start growing the team. And so a lot of the success was actually nothing too complicated per se. It was, I knew a few pillars that I wanted to continue to focus on and get really, really good at. So my core pillars are, like most people, 60% of the business from sphere of influence. So my social media is included in that sphere of influence, or people that I know. And then the rest needs to be growing that pie, right? Growing that sphere. And you can grow it by acquiring clients from other sources. And so there was a good source from YouTube. So I continue to double down on YouTube content, educating the public, showing myself, showing places, showing homes. So that has been a good driver of business. There's also paid sources. So make no mistake, at the end of the day, you want to understand what is the return on whether it's Zillow, Realtor.com, Facebook ads, mailers, et cetera, et cetera. So I track all of that. And if it's working well, then I'll double down and triple down on it. If it's not, then I scale it back. But the idea is, everybody will have its own pillars. But the question that I have for everyone on this webinar, or anyone that's watching, is, are you actually tracking it very closely? Like, do you know the exact ROI of if you spend $2,000 on Zillow, how many leads you get? What's your conversion rate on that? What's your return on that? If you don't know it at that granular level, then you're doing yourself a disservice, because how are you going to plan what you want to do in the upcoming year, right? If it's working very well, I would argue, why are you not putting way more money in that pillar? And so just doing that over years, I think a lot of people aren't doing that. And it is very, very critical to actually even look at that almost every month to just see the financial health of your business. And so that was a great driver, because as soon as I realized, okay, oh, wow, this pillar or that source is doing like this, put more money, reinvest in it on the money side, but also reinvest on the education side, right? All of these pillars work, but they're maybe at different sides of the funnel, right? So people talk about Google PPC ads, Facebook ads, they work. Whether you had an experience that worked or not, it's really on you, but they're working for people, for mega teams across the country, but that's top of the funnel, right? So there's a completely different and long-term thinking and game when it comes to that, versus like something like Zillow or Open House are on the very bottom of the funnel, and then there's a different game, different approach for that. So when you understand what works, you gotta still double down on the education, like maybe refine your scripts, refine your content that you're sharing with them, refine your value add for those type of people. And that's always an ongoing thing. That never changes, because markets change. So that never changes. So I would say it's a combination of the focus, combination of the discipline. My day is actually, quite frankly, the same virtually every day. And as you have that, it's really a compounding effect. And you just kind of keep looking back, seeing what works and improving upon that pillar. Biggest challenges is what you asked is the recruiting side right now. I haven't in the past, because I was a solo agent until really the beginning of this year, I didn't really focus on bringing in other talent to continue to grow what we have going on, and to also help people just follow the blueprint that I have. And so, shameless plug, I am recruiting and I am bringing on other agents, especially in the Bay Area. Especially in this market, teams are always able to do better because you have the ecosystem, so you have the community, but you also have the scale, right? You have to scale someone like myself that continues to get coaching, continues to go to conferences, continue to learn from the top producers, and that gets instilled on best practices, role playing, and things like that. So if there's anyone you know that's in the Bay Area that's not doing too well, or they're looking for help, then my contact details, you can DM me on Instagram, and love to have that conversation. But the scaling is very important right now. And that's also a very big opportunity, right? The fact is, as a macro, that all forecasts and all the trends are going to be there, and it's happening. We're going to have less volume, without a doubt, and it's going to be substantially less volume, right? I think we're looking at 1.4 million homes less to transact. So I think that's maybe a 20% decline in transactions at the very least. That's the forecast. I suspect it should get worse. So the idea is the pie is shrinking, but the ones that are trained, the ones that are disciplined, they will be taking more of that pie. And that's what usually happens in these kind of markets.
Right. So there's a lot of good points that Spencer has mentioned here, but a couple things I'd like to break down a little further. So one of those things is discipline, right? So consistency is key when it comes to anything, especially in social and digital marketing, which is really big for your business at the moment. It's going to continue to be important. And honestly, if you're not on social, you're considered obsolete, right? People tend to check multiple sources before they even reach out to you to begin with. So looking at that, discipline's important. Like Spencer was mentioning, I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here on this call, but if you don't want to do something, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not the right time to do it, right? If you want to continue to drive your business, it's something you have to work at daily. So that being said, there are multiple channels that are really important for being present on a daily basis, or at least fairly consistently. One of those is social, right? So whatever channels that may be for you, but consistency is very important there. Other things that are important is having a website that you feel converts and is strong and sells your market and what you do and how you're special. Other things that, are really important is your SEO, your search engine optimization, making sure you're ranking correctly. And then fourth is your lead gen, and in no particular order, right? So lead gen is extremely important to your growth, obviously. So I'd love to know from the group here, and I'm going to drop a poll, what you feel is most important to you at the moment out of those 4 categories. So that being said, as you're continuing to, reach out to every market that you're potentially in or grow your business, there's things that are really important in doing that on a daily basis. I will send this information over at the end of this session as well tomorrow. For those of you who joined a little bit later, this recording will be passed out for anyone who's on this call Friday morning. But that being said, there's 6 laws of attraction. These are basic psychology-based principles that, whether you realize it or not, is playing into your daily interactions. So I'd love to break these down with Spencer here, because he does this consistently in his business, and actually we've seen it in this call. And I'd also love to hear, as we go through these laws of attraction, how you feel you've either been able to really use these to your advantage, or if they're a struggle for you. So the first one is law of similarity, or common ground. So this is a really, really basic principle, right? Basically, people who have the same perspectives or attitudes or activities tend to develop closer relationships together. And this is the same with your digital presence and growing your clients, right? If I don't feel that I can connect with you in any shape or form, I'm not going to want to work with you, quite frankly. And that's just the way that the world works, right? People want to work with people who they feel they have a connection with, which is why social has gotten as much traction as it has, and especially in the past years. So we're going to break down 2 of these at a time, but they just to kind of get through these in a reasonable period here. So the second one is law of misattribution. So basically what this is, and I'm sure all of you have done this or felt this before. If you are in a situation where, oh my gosh, I have this great feeling, but it's not tied to anything specific, usually the people that you're around in that situation is going to be the positive tie and connection for you. So basically, in exercise, when your brain releases endorphins, you're getting a non-general sense of well-being, right? So if you're doing this with other people or people nearby, you're going to create a connection with these people, whether you realize it or not. Both of these laws of attractions you can use in your daily business to help you grow. So Spencer, I'd love to hear your take on this.
I think that's fair. And so there's kind of there's a few thoughts about this, and some you can control and others you can't control. Right. So there is this always, I remember this saying, you can try to mimic the behavior of somebody that you meet or that you talk to. So I would almost put it in 2 different buckets, and it's up to you depending on what the lead source is. If it's the bucket of you meeting strangers, then whether it's open house, whether it's publicly, whether it's somewhere, then it's about almost like mimicking the behavior and making compliments about what they do. And there's a approach for that, but it's very reactive, and it has to be, because it's a random person that comes through your door, a random person that comes on your website, things like that. But with Soulstra, as you brought up, that's more of a proactive approach. And why is that proactive approach? Because you're creating content for the people that you would want to connect with, whether it's a luxury market, whether it's just first-time buyers, whether it's just educating the public. You're reaching out and you're sharing yourself. And so at that point, the only people that then reach back out to you are those that have seen your content for some time, can relate to you already, and then they will connect to you. So it's a very different approach, because they've already digested you and your personality for a long time. This is why it's so important to be just yourself on social, right? You don't want to really fake it, because if you fake it, you may be working with people that you didn't want to work with anyways. Right. And so if you're just being yourself and then they come to you, then those are fantastic relationships just from the get-go. And that's the thing that's also important to also realize, right? And this is why, like, all the pillars work, but you just have to understand where they are at and how do they value relationships. If it's like an internet lead, they don't value relationships. Why would they value you? They don't even know who you are. You're there as a conduit to help them buy their home or sell their home. I mean, let's be very open about that. But someone from social, they may actually want to have a relationship with you. That's why they reached out to you. Now, you may get a relationship afterwards that you help different people buy and sell a house, but it's also just very important to understand they're not just trying to be your friend, depending on which of the pillars it is. So I think that those different laws of attraction and things like that are applicable depending on the source. So hence why I mentioned you have to understand like what is that source, and then you may be able to talk to them and engage with them differently.
Right. So you mentioned something that's really important here, and this comes into I've seen poll answers come in, and lead gen obviously it seems like is a pressing factor for a lot of the people on this call right now. Same as getting websites up and running, and building recognition in the market. So with all of these, being yourself is so important. Like Spencer mentioned, you're going to attract a completely different client than you may even want to work with if you're not being fully authentic. Currently in our day and age, people are very quick to suss out when you're not being the real you. And so that's why, getting canceled has turned into such a big thing, right? People are becoming detectives. So learning how and what your brand looks like, and then building that brand effectively and consistently is really important. So something that, kind of ties into that is the law of self-disclosure. So people will feel more attracted to someone who they feel is real and vulnerable, basically. Someone who is willing to be honest and transparent, and someone who's willing to actually give their emotional opinion about something, which doesn't have to be dramatic, right? Rather than just always giving factual. It's important to give both, but this is how you make someone feel that they have more of a connection with you than they may, right? This is also how social brands are built. An earlier session we discussed was about superfans. And so that recording can be sent out if you would like a copy of that as well. However, so superfans is something that happens when you've created a community where people feel they already know you, right? Think about Nike, right? People are willing to get the logo tattooed on them. That's pretty extreme. But the reason people are willing to do this is because they believe so much in who the brand is. Just think of what that can do with a person. So the art and the law of self-disclosure is really important here. The next one is the law of humor. So this can automatically turn people away, right? Be like, oh no, I'm not a comedian. That's not how I am. And that's not necessarily what this means, right? Keeping your voice and tone consistent, which is really important in everything you do, comes into play here. So your version of humor or lightening something that may be a little darker is a rule that allows people to feel they can laugh with you and actually bond with you and create genuine connections. So Spencer, what's your opinion on these as well?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to just them understanding like you're not a robot and you're just not, all you do is buy and sell homes, right? It's like, what is your personality? Crack jokes, enlighten them, or have some fun, right? Because it's the process can be very stressful. Depending on which market it is and what's going on, but it can be very stressful. So just cracking it and having fun, having some jokes, getting some humor in, can just lighten up the mood and can also help them bring their walls down. And so right. If you're able to do that, whether any of these different laws, it'll just help your own engagement and your own trust continue to build with the ultimately the client.
Mm-hmm. And the last two that we want to talk about here are the law of curiosity. So this is really interesting because basically there's something called a curiosity hook. And this piques someone's interest and makes someone want to continue to engage with you. For example, with Spencer, the law of curiosity here might be like, wait a second, how has he become one of the top 1% of real estate agents in 3 years? I've been doing this for 6. I want to learn more, right? Maybe join his team or whatever that looks like. But this can look like a lot of different things, whether your goal is growth with your team or getting new clients, right? So what is that thing and that makes you special and makes me think, wait a second, I'd like to learn more about this person, so that's really important on a daily basis, and you can put that into anything you're doing, really. The second piece is the law of availability or scarcity, right? So scarcity mindset is definitely something that we see in a lot of marketing, and it can either be wonderful or quite frankly turn people away from it. So this can look like a lot of different things. Obviously, in real estate, we don't want to not be responding to people because we're trying to make them want us more, right? That's a completely wrong approach here. But scarcity is actually in our market right now, right? So the law of availability and scarcity is something in the real estate market that people are experiencing in itself. So at this point, your goal is to teach them and be transparent, because this is already something that exists. You don't need to create more of it. What is your thoughts, Spencer?
No, I think, related to both, curiosity is always very important to myself. Hence why I go to conferences, hence why I'm always talking to bigger team leaders that have a bigger, that is where I want to be. And so there's always a curiosity of how did they get there? What did they do? What are the right processes and steps to get to that level? And I'm sure, and I hope a lot of other people that are watching are curious of, did I get here? What can I do? So everybody should have some level of curiosity, but within reach too, right? Like I don't actually have too much curiosity at this stage of those that have 100 agents, because I'm not anywhere close to that. My curiosity may be those that are the 10 to 20 agents. How do they do that? What are the things learned? Because it's applicable to yourself. So I would say also just be careful with what the curiosity is. Because you want to have it relevant to where you are personally at, and then be able to take action upon that. So those are my thoughts related to the scarcity mindset. I'm happy to bring that up too. Like if I had a scarcity mindset, I wouldn't be on this show telling you guys the thoughts of how I've been able to do this or just ways to help you guys. And so while the market is shrinking, what we have seen in the past is those, like everyone on this channel or everyone on this webinar, that are actually trying to improve themselves, trying to learn best practices, applying different things that they learn. You guys have a much bigger leg up than a lot of the other people, which they're getting absorbed by the media too, and they will exit the business, right? There's a lot of people that will exit the business. And so what remains is just those that are, in my opinion, usually more talented and more skillful and more dedicated to the profession. So there are a lot of positivities of that.
Right. So for those of you who may be struggling or having a hard time with, your website, lead gen, social, SEO, if these are things that you would like more resources or information around, please reach out to us. We have a link that I just dropped in the chat. We're happy to go over a strategy session with you, no strings attached, and just talk about what your pain points are. So that being said, if there's anyone on this call who would like to come on, brave souls here, come on video and have a conversation with us, we would love to talk with you. So what are those pain points that you're running into in your business? Are any of these laws of attractions things that maybe you disagree with, or you think you need to utilize more? I think specifically for Spencer too, he has had the ability to just get on camera. For example, his YouTube channel. I don't know Spencer's opinion or background necessarily and how he feels on getting on camera, but I've been doing this for over 10 years now, and I remember in the very beginning I wanted nothing to do with it, and to get there you just have to do it, right? So it's one of those things where you're not going to learn how to drive a car if you're not in the car, right? So you kind of just need to start somewhere. So Spencer, you've continued to push out content and you have a regular YouTube channel. How have you been able to get over those humps of creating content or being on camera? And I'd love to hear more about that from you, Spencer, and then anyone in the chat, feel free to just drop in the chat if you would like to come on camera or answer any questions. We'd love to have you.
So I would say when it comes to creating content, it's no different than anything new that you do. I mean, imagine the first time that you may have to cold call somebody, Like, how terrifying was that? Imagine the first time you met with your first client in real estate. How terrifying was that? Because you didn't even know what to really expect. Now you look back, you're like, oh wow, I did everything wrong. But the fact is, the more that you do it, the more you get used to it, and the more you kind of get numb to all those potential concerns that there is. But it's also repetition. It's no different than any skill. There's the line of you have to do things over 10,000 hours to be just decent at it. And filming video, doing sales calls, meeting with people, doing real estate transactions, the same kind of mindset. So if that's the approach and that's the goal, then it's about, why are you stressing out for your 100-hour work on this particular line? You didn't even start, to be fair. And so as long as you understand that, you will naturally get better and better, right? Right. If you look at my very first video, it's going to be significantly worse than the later videos. And so my goal is to keep using the different things that I learned from my own, but also learn from others, and just keep improving and expanding upon that. So that would be my tip for others.
Yeah, and to that point, Spencer, you mentioned that your first video versus your videos now look very different. Something to note that is very, very prominent in social media now, and you can even see it in LP's main brand channel, social, is that organic content and content that is less highly produced actually performs better. Content that doesn't seem like, oh, I need to sell you all these things. If you have clients who were interested in you, and then there's this highly produced event that they're doing for you, I'm going to put up a couple walls with you, because I'm going to start wondering what the catch is, right? So it kind of depends on how you look at content creation in general and what your brand goals are. Obviously, everybody has a different approach. However, just statistically speaking, organic content does perform best. I just dropped the 6 laws of attraction in the chat because I see some people asking questions about that. And then let's see here. We also had a couple people who'd be willing to join. Tim, thank you for being willing to join. I'm going to move you over. Please bear with me for 1 second, everyone, while I do so. So again, for those of you who maybe are considering joining, this is also a great opportunity to get out of that comfort zone, right? So we're talking about this consistently right now, but it's not something that feels natural, right? We don't know everybody on this call, but that doesn't mean this isn't a great opportunity for you. So feel free to hop on over or raise your hand, and I will add you over. Tim, you should be able to unmute and turn your video on if you choose to do so. Let's see here. Dennis or Denise, I apologize.
Able to unmute, not able to start my video.
Okay, 1 second.
The host has stopped.
Okay, you should be able to now.
There we go.
Welcome on. Hi, how are you?
Hey, good.
All right, I'm gonna move one person over to, and then we'll start chatting here. All right, Denise or Dennis, I'm really sorry if I say anyone's name wrong. People always say my name wrong, so I know that pain. All righty, so and again, if anyone else would like to come on camera or join this chat and have this conversation, please raise your hand or drop it in the chat. But Tim and Denise?
Yeah.
Okay. I would love to kind of hear from both of you. First of all, what makes you want to jump on video? Thank you so much for coming on over.
Like you said, getting out of my comfort zone. I mean, there's no question that our industry is, video is going to be core to success in our industry. This is something I've been working on for the better part of this year, to the point where I've actually invested in some training on how to be better on video. And, I know there's a lot of talk about being yourself and being authentic and everything, but there's being yourself and authentic, but there's being effective at being yourself and authentic on video. So it's really important for me to do that. But I think, one of the things I just wanted to share, Spencer, thanks so much for sharing your story and your journey here. But the message that I keep hearing that keeps running through a lot of what I'm doing is when you're on video, when you're becoming, you're creating that awareness, that recognition of who you are, it always comes back to you have to be yourself. And I just wrote a bunch of notes as we were talking, Spencer, as you were talking. And it's like, what is it that I enjoy? And, for me, my background is engineering and management consulting, which I did for many, many years. So I was very heavy into data analysis and how the data helps to inform a strategy for my clients and a particular path. So, as I'm listening to all of this and trying to figure out what my path is and what my brand is in this industry, it's just, I love data. And, you mentioned we want to attract the people that we want to work with. And I think my key takeaway today is just embrace the fact that I love data, that I love data analysis, and how that analysis can help inform my clients to make informed decisions. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to get out there on social media and say, I'm a data guy. And if you're interested in data, then, that's great.
Right. Well, I think this is a perfect example of leaning in to your expertise and your interests. What lights you up and what you are naturally interested in, you are going to find your core audience, right? You are going to find the clients who love data and can completely speak your language all day and want nothing but that. There's going to be another agent who is all about emotion. They're selling, look what this home can do for your family, and can you imagine raising your kids here? And it's a completely different approach, right? And it's two completely different clients. One that you may click really well with and continue to refer you because he's like, oh, this guy knows his stuff, or somebody else who's like, they made me feel like I could live there, right? It's different. It's a different approach. So yeah, thank you. Spencer, do you have anything to add?
No, it's excellent, right? You want to figure out what you are passionate in talking about, but to be fair, you also want to make sure is there an audience for that? And there usually is, right? So my background I was in software sales for my first decade, so my approach is a lot more data driven, and that's just my framework of how I like to present myself. And so if that's what you want to do, then you have to also just be mindful of the content that you create and want to create has that theme. So that is going to be your niche. And then you continue to keep putting that out.
And then Denise, do you have anything to add, or what made you feel like you wanted to come on screen?
Well, I wanted to come on screen and thank everybody for the valuable information. However, going back to the message of having difficult conversations, I'd like to hear what other people or what other agents are seeing and how they're conversating and diving deep into the motivation and finding solutions for today's market problems. Because I personally can say that I've never had so many people cancel. I've never had so many listings stay stagnant. I'm dealing with a handful of sellers who, after several price reductions, were just kind of stuck, and their mindset is we're approaching expiration dates, and their mindset is now, well, I'm not going to reduce anymore and I could just rent it. I'm just not moving. And it's frustrating for me because I've devoted a lot of money, time, hours on this kind of, on these clients and their properties. And so, but at the same time, it's like, how far can we push and how far can we persuade? And what do those conversations look like?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack here, and anyone who wants to jump into that in the chat, please feel free. Spencer, do you want to start?
So it's important. So it's more important than ever of two different things, and it depends on which side of the coin you're at, whether it's a buyer or seller. So let's break it down. So if it was a buyer side, it goes back to having the conversation and having them share of what is your motivation to begin with, right? Like why are you even going to go out? You have all this bad news out there. Why are you still even looking? And then they'll likely tell you, and it's for usually a few of the same reasons, right? They don't want to keep paying higher rents, which is a real problem. They outgrew their space. They may want stability. And so it's important for you to note that and also to bring that up whenever there are future concerns, because that concern doesn't always just end at that moment. They're going to keep getting bombarded with it every single week. So that's kind of one aspect. The other aspect is to set them up correctly, right? Like, just because prices are declining right now doesn't mean everything is 50% off, right? And so you want to make sure, like, are they even looking in the right areas, or like, are they even wasting time? So you want to make sure they should be looking in the areas based off of their criteria, but also that matches with a lot of homes in that price range, right? So I don't think a lot of people do a good enough job of saying, hey, look, they want to live in XYZ city, but that city was not going to be in their range, still is not in their range. So they're just wasting time looking in that area. And so it's your job to enlighten them and say, look, this is what has sold in the last 2 months. Yes, prices have declined. Let's even put a buffer of 5% on top of that. But even if you put a buffer of 5% of past solds, it's still, this is how many that would have potentially worked. But I know this area well. Have you thought about these cities? If not, we should go look at this, right, and look at these cities. And so you need to be knowledgeable on your own end. When they say, hey, look, my budget is X, then you should already know, okay, well, if this is what they have in mind, they really should be looking here. And that's on you to be that data driven, but also understanding of where price points are to then be able to help them along with their search. And you want to do that very early on, because you don't want them to look at it for a while and then they like, I can't find anything. It's like, yeah, they couldn't find anything from day one because that was not realistic. So that is very important. Now on the seller side, it's very difficult, right? The seller side goes back to saying you got to figure out the motivation more than ever. They can't just be selling because they want to just sell. That's not a real answer. There's got to be something behind it, because as we go through price reductions, that becomes much more of a real thing, and it could be a complete waste of your time and money. And that's what you're dealing with, and you really could be setting that home up for the next agents that will be willing to have that upfront discussion. And so the combination of understanding their why, but also a combination of sharing them the data, like this is what it is. Like, I don't control the market. You will do everything you can on your marketing end to help them push the higher range of that market, but everything will sell within a band of prices. Now, the seller will have multiple options. You can try to list it at a very high price and hope somebody buys it, or you can sell it for a more conservative number, but you have two people in different price ranges that could be able to buy up your home. What would you like to do, right? So having that upfront conversation and also continue to share these different things that are happening with the market, whether it's prices, maybe neighboring homes that have transaction, maybe it's just the general economy. They need to be educated on what is actually happening, especially the longer that you're on. And you're going to have to make a bet, right? You're going to have to make some kind of potential drastic move if you're going to be losing it. And it could be a bigger reduction to spur a lot of interest again, to really reset up, but those are very important. And the caveat is if they're not willing to change and they're like very fixed on a number, then it's important for us to make that decision. Is it worth taking on this listing? Right? Now the listing is not a guarantee of a sale. And I think people forget that. They think because we've been so exposed that any listing we get was so good, we'll easily sell, it was like no work. Now with the market completely different, if they're fixed at a number of a neighboring home that sold 6 months ago and they're not going to budge from that, even if it sits on the market for a month, then you have to make that business decision on your end that there's probably other people to work with.
Okay.
Right. So I just want to drop something in the chat real quick and welcome on someone else who we have on video here as well. So one, if you are running into these issues, whether it is, your social, lead gen, websites, SEO, or you would just like more information about some of these pain points you're facing, or potentially get in contact with, people who can help align you better, I'm going to drop a poll in the chat. So feel free to just, answer there. If you'd like us to reach out to you. And then more so back to this call here, we have some questions popping up that I want us to answer for sure. So if you do have any questions, feel free. But also, Shailene, is that how we say your name?
Shalene.
Shalene, okay.
She'll lean on you if you don't get the right price.
Puns help people remember,
Yeah.
so well done. Yeah, Tim's clapping over there. Tim, I can pull you back off video unless you have anything else you want to bring up. I know it's kind of odd to sit there.
No, I'm good. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. And Denise, do you want to dive into anything a little bit deeper?
No, I'm okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, awesome. Thank you both so much for joining.
Bye.
All right. Shailene, go ahead and tell us why you joined.
Well, first of all, I'm brand new to Luxury Presence, and I didn't realize this was one of the added benefits of being able to connect with amazing agents all over the nation, because we're just barely starting to work on my website, which is why I joined. But so I wanted to just say thank you. This is a wonderful benefit. But I actually want to just reframe this time a little bit differently, in that I am actually just a little bit excited to have some breathing room to continue to work on my branding and to build what will help me for the future, to use this time wisely. And I know we're always like, sell, we gotta get the commissions, but I have 30 years behind me of marketing and advertising experience. And my branding right now, there's so many opportunities, so that when there are moments and connections. So I'm going to share with you my pain point, because I'm focusing on building that brand, and maybe Spencer can give me some feedback. So my generation doesn't want to present anything until it's perfect. That was the generation I was raised in. And one of the things I want to present is to become an expert on subdivisions. There's no one has a destination for information on subdivisions in our market. And so I want to do YouTube videos. I want to go to each subdivision. I want to talk a little bit about it, and I want to put that out there. But my pain point is, what if I don't know everything? And what if I only put one out, and then can I not announce it till I have all 42 subdivisions in this community? Or so kind of help me with that pain point of knowing I'm not afraid to be out there. I just have this concept that it's gotta all be, I gotta know it all before I start.
Well,
Yes.
I'd love to, Spencer, go ahead. I definitely have a couple things I want to add here as well.
Yeah, there's a mindset of being perfect is going to inhibit you of producing content and getting the word out. Because the reality is things will even change. Even if you're perfect today, like, let's say you got all the information you can possibly get and you knew everything about it. My bet is that over time that will likely change anyways, because things change. Like subdivisions in California has changed a lot this year. So you may have knew everything that there was to know last year, but now there's new rules and different things in place to adjust for that. But it doesn't stop. It shouldn't prevent you from start getting content out and start building upon that. And so the mindset is, you're correct. The aspect of the marketing approach before versus what we have with social media and just an ever growing library of content is to be able to get your name out there and to get the content out there and to continue to get feedback and revise upon that, right? Like, what if you thought you had the best idea of nobody's doing subdivision? Well, you want to test it. The biggest thing now is you can test these things. You may have thought it was the greatest idea, and a lot of people may be looking at it, and you post it, and a lot of people look at it, then you're like, oh, wow, I got to double down, triple down on this and keep improving it. Conversely, you may post it, and you thought it was the best thing in the world, and nobody wants to go see it. And then, so why did you want to spend all this time to try to make this perfect when nobody even cares about it, right? So the cool thing about this is that you can also test a lot of these different things, and then you can figure out what works for you. Is it a series on how to identify it? Is it a series on how to do it? Is it a series like day in the life of actually applying it, like a vlog style? So even of the subdivision content itself, there's so many different angles that you can have depending on what you want to do and what your audience wants to see. And so, but you wouldn't ever know that unless you start producing these things out. And so that's the mantra of it, is you're not expected to be perfect, and no one's expecting me to be perfect, but the more you do it, the more it'll get improved, and it's by repetition.
I appreciate that, Spencer, because my background is corporate marketing. And so you do focus groups and you do things behind the scenes before you present your perfect, you know, you decide that it's good. So I appreciate that change of mindset. Thank you.
For sure.
And something to mention here as well is, something we're obviously talking today about is the law of attraction, and the law of similarity here plays into great effect. So common ground, right? Nobody's perfect. Nobody has all the answers. And someone who is willing to actually admit that they don't know serves you more than you may even realize. Because if I think you always have the answers, it's most likely that you don't. And you may be like budging and fibbing just a tiny bit to give me what I'd want to know. I'd rather you said to me, hi, I don't know. Let me find out for you. So that's something to mention here as well. We are at time. There are a couple questions that we're going to answer real quick. For those of you who need to jump, this recording will be sent out tomorrow. And for those of you who would like us to reach out to you, we'll make sure we get back to you as well. So I'm going to run through a couple of these questions here. Is there anything else that we can answer for you? Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining. Real quick, let's just look at a couple questions we had. One was, what is your average sales price, and where is the first place you suggest to put your marketing dollars? So marketing dollars, honestly, it depends on your goals. And I know that's probably not what you want to hear, because that's a very vague answer. However, typically, everybody has a different area that their dollars will be best suited. So if that's something you're struggling with, I definitely recommend you make a session with us. But Spencer, can you answer the other piece of that question?
Yeah, my average sales price is about 1.1 to 1.2 million here.
So where do you think, I mean, obviously for your marketing dollars, you're putting that behind your social, growing your website, growing your leads, right? Things of that nature, but it really depends per person.
Yeah, it really depends on what your goal and your vision is. If you want the lowest hanging fruits, the lowest hanging fruit and the most expensive ones are for a reason. They're going to be Realtor and Zillow.com leads. That's right. Why they are that price. Whether you have an opinion about it or not, it's up to you. But the fact is they're going to be the lowest hanging fruits because they're the ones already ready to start looking at homes and doing showings. And then the other option is more of the long-term approaches. So the long-term would be like creating YouTube content. So we could be hiring editors. It could be hiring videographers. It could be hiring script writers, right? There's all these different people that, as you can imagine, if you produce a video of all these things that are required to do it. So those are the thoughts. It just depends on where you're at. I wouldn't suggest, I would just suggest like, take a look at where you're at with your business. How much are you able to commit to? What kind of runway do you have? And then from there, you can determine like, what's the best approach you want to do.
Right. And kind of pairing up with that question, something else that was asked was, what are your top social media channels? But also more so than that, what are your recommendations? And I kind of want to answer the back piece of this real quick before having you answer. Each person, and I know this is not what people want me to say, but each person's social channels are going to depend on what your goals are. And what your strengths are, quite frankly. Instagram is something, and TikTok, right? Reels, short form video content, stock worthy video content, photos that are aesthetically pleasing to the eye. That type of content does better. LinkedIn is great for storytelling, building connections, building that market. Facebook is a really great place for continuing to establish relationships and keep tabs on your clients and see their growth and how their lives are changing. And YouTube has so many other pieces of resources that Spencer can talk to that you can use on it, right? But with YouTube-based content, you can cut that down into micro content. You can use that on your Instagram. So repurposing content is something that Spencer does a lot.
Yeah, and I'll just add to it. For me, YouTube and LinkedIn are my top two. It will just depend on what your market is, especially in the Bay Area. There's a lot more professionals, and so they use LinkedIn a lot more than actually other social media platforms. So you really want to understand who your demographic is, who you want to target, and be where they are at.
Right.